Okay, Justin, I think I've been mistakenly associating fruit notes with light roast levels. Okay, I tasted both Mr. Pablo and the Pride espresso blend, and both are fruity, but looking at the bean, neither look light due to the coloring or absence of chaff on the inside of the bean. Is light versus medium more characterized by acidity versus balance, aka chocolate? Not even getting into dark territory here. Okay, yeah. So you get it, Justin, that taste is a spectrum, taste is subjective, and coffee itself is not a perfect science, and indeed a meld of the two, of science and art. Okay, cool, so we're on the same page. So in particular, so you tried Mr. Pablo and Pride. Okay, so Pride, the blend being a medium roast level of all three of my coffees here that I had. So I had Mr. Pablo, I had 1,000 Hands, I had Rasuna. That's a blend for Pride. All at semi, like some of them are medium, I forget right now. Some of them are medium levels, like the Rasuna was a medium. And I think the 1,000 Hands and the Mr. Pablo were indeed light roast, but all blended together, making Pride. Mr. Pablo, single origin. When we're looking at roasts and taste, in the cup, we have two sides of the spectrum, or we have acidity and then we have sweetness. Those are the two sides of the spectrum for tasting coffee in general. Okay, so the lighter will be more acidic, the darker will be more technically sweet. Now, that's a general sort of rule. Let's break the crust on these, give them a little sniff, and clear the ground. So we have acidity and then we have sweetness, okay? So generally, we can still get fruit notes anywhere on that scale. Now, what kind of fruit? Right, fruit's a very general category of tasting notes. So when we're tasting, we really want to try to taste through just that first kind of like level of taste. So fruit, okay, what kind of fruit? Sometimes it's still too hard to communicate that. As you're tasting, you're trying to put words to what you're tasting. It's difficult. It's not an easy task. So what you can do is maybe think about colors, or maybe even how certain fruits can be processed. So like when I taste a sort of syrupy sweet fruit, like a sweet, maybe it's a strawberry jam or it's a blueberry jam, something like that. That's what I typically will taste sometimes. And that's the flavors that I actually chase, because I look for something like that where it's like, I want sweet and I want acidic. Now, acidic in the cup is almost like the feeling that you get on the sides of your tongue. That's acidity. And then sweetness is sort of that, you know, kind of like candy. You think of candy or syrupy or something like that. So sort of like mental cues for you when you're thinking of how to classify what you're actually tasting. These are all things that were kind of explained to me to help me go through what you're going through, which is like, how do I classify what I'm tasting, right? Or how do I put this thing that I'm tasting or learning into a box so I can catalog that away in my brain and I can keep learning and building on that, versus like, where do I even put this piece of information, right? That's basically where you're at, which I get. I still am there sometimes. So you said tasted both, neither look light. So the category of like, you're telling me it's light, I taste fruit, okay. But they don't look like a light roast. Okay, cool. So the physical characteristics of light, you talked about chaff. So that showing of chaff, you really are typically only going to see that in a washed processed coffee. For example, if you were to order 1,000 Hands, which is Ethiopia, it's a washed coffee, and you order it, I'll roast it light for you most likely, right? I think you can choose to make it medium, but light is the way to go. You'll get the nice blueberries in there, but you will see that chaff. You will see those kind of black little crevices on the surface of the bean. I'll throw up a picture to show you. And that's a wash process coffee. a light one generally. And the only way that you can really standardly agree with the rest of the world typically is like the SEA color of the light roasted coffee. For example, you throw it in this microwave looking thing. It's a spectrometer. It's gonna analyze the color. You got a lot of it like that, playful like this. Look at the color, and that could tell you based on their scale and their measurement, like, oh, this is true light roast. And then you would still have to check the box for the amount of acidity that you taste there, and then all the other boxes that you check when you're roasting the coffee. How long did you finish it? All right, we're at 7 minutes. We need to try these. So the appearance of a light roasted coffee can be deceiving. You know, we have this here. This is a light roasted Rasuna versus, say, a light roasted Pioneer or even Mr. Pablo. So Rasuna is a wash process coffee. You're gonna see that chaff in between of the bean, and you're gonna see these kind of black crevasses in the bean itself. It's gonna almost maybe even look like the face of the bean look concave instead of being swelled. That's a light roasted coffee. But conversely, if we look at a light roasted, you know, Pioneer, which is a natural process coffee, maybe the colors are the same, but certainly how they look are quite a bit different. And that's just the nature of the bean. I think it was these guys. I want to get these mixed up. And so it's hard to tell on camera, but if you had them both in front of you, they still are, I think, in the same color spectrum. And the only way you can really tell that is with that Agtron or that spectrometer sort of tool. And that's with grinding them too and seeing their internal color as well. So what you see here is just the external color of the bean. When you grind it, that's a better and a far more accurate tell of, say, what a light roast is based upon color alone. Okay, so you can get in the weeds of it all, but really, you know, the light roast, yeah, those are really interesting observations, and you're right. You know, you're right to for a little flag to go off and go, hey, why don't these have the little chaff and stuff? Right? And that's just because of the process of the coffee. We're natural process. And also too, I could be just speaking, you know, kind of loosely, oh, this is natural, this is washed. Let's clarify now that a wash process coffee, what they do is when the coffee seeds are in the cherry, they're harvesting them, right? So for example, and they're ready to depulp or take off the cherry part from the actual seeds of the coffee. They'll do that with water. And there's a couple ways you can do that of eliminating that cherry part. So with a natural process coffee, they're not going to use water actually. What they're going to do is let that cherry ferment, like just out in the open, ferment and get really like wrinkly and really dark. And eventually they'll run it through a depulper where they can separate the cherry from the seed of the coffee, right? And what that does is it leaves a sort of very like maybe sweet or just a different process to the coffee of removing that cherry from the seed of the coffee. So I was talking about, you know, the natural process versus wash process. So with wash process, you're going to get a cleaner cup in the end, meaning it's going to be a lot more clear in its flavors, and it's not going to be so maybe muddled down with, these are all kind of very subjective words, but a sweetness, a stickiness to it in the mouth feel. Okay. These are all like body mouth feel descriptors, and I may not all be saying it like exactly politically correct to industry standards, but this is just my experience and how I interpret, you know, what I'm tasting, and then trying to convey that to you on camera in the most honest way that I can, and trying with a full-hearted intent to do and explain it in a way that makes sense to me. So with the wash process, they're washing away, they're depulping and also washing away that cherry from the seed. And so yeah, just two different processes that's going to result in how the green coffee looks in the end. So you'll notice sometimes, right, like natural process coffee, see more of a, not so much green, almost tan, right? Yeah, it's pretty clear, right? So this one right here, the one that's greener, versus this one's more yellow, more brown. Guess which one is the washed one, okay? For that cleaner cup, it's a process that uses water to wash away the cherry of the coffee seed, okay, when we're processing these. Versus the natural one, which one do you think that one is? Okay, that one is where the cherry is fermenting, drying out on that coffee seed, and then finally, when it's dried out to a certain level, right? They'll check something, humidity or something like that, or a certain amount of days or whatever, how it looks, something like that, right? Whatever the farmer says it's ready to be depulped, right? To depulp, to take out the cherry, then they'll do that. So these are the two processes. And in the roaster, as they're roasting, you'll see this one, the natural one, creating a lot more chaff, you know, in the sight glass, and just as a byproduct of roasting, you'll see a lot more chaff because of that process. Whereas on the wash side of things, you won't see that. And yeah, again, just observations. We're just trying to observe, catalog, learn, share, and then hopefully, you know, delineate some maybe consistent results and data so that we can create, all in the end, to do, you know, quality control, keep doing the same thing over and over and over again to duplicate our results, right? Because if we're trying to, you know, the only reason why we would be trying to do this is to go into business, right? We want to create a consistent, reliable product so that people can consistently rely on us to buy the same thing if they like it, right? That's the whole reason why people are doing this, why they put money into this thing. Otherwise, for us as home roasters, I'm a home roaster, and I really just purely enjoy all the observations and then share them with you, and then you can do whatever you want with these observations that you learn. Cool? So let's put these guys back. Did we talk enough? Let's taste these guys.